All right, greetings from ADB. My name is Manoj Sharma. A very warm welcome to all the speakers, participants from ADB, our guests, partners, and energy and urban experts. We are glad to have this deep dive workshop on urban energy nexus, which is very important and is very much in line with ADB's goal to make cities more livable. And this energy urban nexus helps us on our low carbon transformation, green resilient recovery. ADB's long-term strategic framework, which we call Strategy 2030, includes 7 operation priorities. One of the important operation priority is number 4, making cities more livable. And ADB's urban community is also preparing urban sector direction guide, which complements our priority to provide further guidance towards our goals and implementation plans. And among other areas, one of our critical focus is on strengthening climate actions and better mainstream climate change resilience principles in our urban development work. The role of cities is becoming increasingly important. All of us are quite aware of the need of managing our cities, which contribute 80% of GHG emissions and consume 80% of energy. And in the light of global agenda of Paris Agreement alignment, SDGs, and localization of NDCs, cities have become very important. And they are the principal actors to achieve the objectives of global and national climate agenda. So under this context, the current deep dive workshop is intended to examine and discuss the role of and potential of cities, the importance of integrated urban energy solutions, and the interlinked benefits they bring to social, environment, and economic growth. I leave it to the moderator to describe the 2 really important sessions which are coming through after this short opening remarks. Just want to mention that in ADB, our urban sector group and our trust fund, Urban Climate Change Resilience Trust Fund, and the energy sector group, and all other sectors and thematic groups are working on this important concept. And we are also thankful to Government of UK and FCDO for supporting this trust fund, which helps our operations in ADB. So I wish everyone really fruitful discussions today and looking forward to continue dialogue beyond this deep dive workshop. So thank you all the participants, and special thanks to our speakers. So best wishes, and back to the moderator, Chris, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manoj. Yes, and welcome to our speakers and participants. This is a deep dive workshop that will address how to maximize energy urban nexus for making cities more livable and low carbon, a topic that is increasingly becoming more important these days. So many thanks to Asia Clean Energy Forum for giving ADB's Urban Sector Group the opportunity to organize this session. As Manoj had just briefly mentioned, this workshop is divided into 2 parts, with session 1 focusing on the topic of aligning urban energy solutions with low carbon urban development on cases from the cities. And session 2 will discuss integrated low carbon solutions for more livable cities. My name is Chris Moon. I'm an urban development specialist at ADB, and I will be moderating the first session before I hand it off to Okju. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders to our audience and speakers. For those who are not speaking, please keep your microphones on mute at all times. Speakers, please put on your cameras when you're speaking, and actually at all times. We would like to see you and have your chat box open throughout the session. We will be operating the slides for you, so just say next when moving on. Speakers, special request to keep the time, as we have allocated 8 minutes for each presentation. And to our audience, we have allocated time for Q&A after 3 presentations, but feel free to type your questions in the chat box at any time. So now that we had an official opening from Manoj with his opening remarks, I would like to now invite our first speaker to deliver the learnings from the city of Seoul. Seoul has a long-term climate change plan that will guide them to transition to carbon neutrality by 2050. And we will hear from Ms. Yoonjin Cho, and Mr. Chaeyoung Jung from the Environmental Policy Division at the Seoul Metropolitan Government. So Yoonjin, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. It is my great pleasure to have this opportunity to join this forum. Well, my name is Yoonjin Cho from the Seoul Metropolitan Government, and I work at the International Cooperations Team at the International Environmental Policy Division. Today, like Chris has mentioned, I will talk about Seoul's integrated low carbon transition actions, focusing on the 2050 Seoul Climate Action Plan. Next. Like many other parts of the world, Seoul is also facing worsening climate crisis. And over the past century, the average temperature rose by 2.3 degrees from 10.7 in the 1910s to 13 degrees in 2010s. Such changes in the temperature led Seoul to experience more days with extreme climate, such as heat wave and tropical nights, as you can see on the screen. And if we continue to emit greenhouse gases at the current pace, we believe the annual average temperature in Seoul will increase by over 4 degrees by late 21st century, and that will be a whole crisis for the city. Next. To overcome the threats caused by climate change, Seoul is trying to lead the climate actions. In fact, we had a lot of interest in the environmental issues in the past. However, our focus was more about preventing water pollution or waste problems. And this has kind of changed in the 2000s when Seoul realized that the city is not safe from the changing climate. And we began to join the international efforts to better address climate change issues by joining city networks such as C40 and ICLEI. In fact, I mentioned C40 and ICLEI because hosting international events such as the C40 Mayors Summit in 2009 and the ICLEI World Congress in 2015 provided us an opportunity to review our climate change efforts and to better tackle climate change and establish plans for the future. In fact, in 2009, when you hosted the C40 Mayors Summit, we announced Seoul Low Carbon Green Growth Master Plan. And in 2015, we announced Promise of Seoul that includes total 36 projects from 10 sectors, such as energy, air quality, transportation, urban farming, health, urban planning, etc. And the Promise Seoul is kind of meaningful because it cannot be implemented and we could not achieve the goal without working with the business and the citizens. Based on our past efforts, we also announced the carbon neutral plan. We also announced to become carbon neutral by 2050 in 2020. And our 2050 climate action plan was approved by the C40 last year. And to achieve the 2050 goal, we have developed a 5-year plan, which is called Seoul Climate Change Master Plan, to carry out our climate actions. Next. And like I mentioned, our goal is to become carbon neutral by 2050. And to become carbon neutral city by 2050, we set the vision of a sustainable city where people, nature, and future coexist. Under this vision, we plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% and by 70% by 2030 and 2040, respectively, from the 2005 level in order to become carbon neutral by 2050. Next. And to make sure that we achieve our goal, we need to kind of find out where our emissions are from. And when we look at the total emissions in our city, we could see that the huge emissions are from the buildings and transportation sectors, which is not surprising because most of the big cities are like this. Seoul is also a mega city with 10 million people, which means that the city is filled with high-rise buildings and cars. And the buildings and transportation sector accounts for almost 90% of total emissions in Seoul, buildings more than 68%, and transportation around 19%. Next, please. And to effectively reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we have established strategies in 5 sectors: green building, green mobility, green forest, green energy, and green cycle. Well, I wish I could go into the details in all these 5 sectors, but due to limited time, I will mainly talk about the building, mobility, and energy sector as they are the main culprits of GHG emissions in Seoul. Next, please. As I mentioned before, building sector is the main culprit of GHG emissions in Seoul, accounting for around 69% of the emissions in Seoul. In particular, buildings over 30 years old with low energy efficiency account for around half of the buildings in our city, and they are contributing to the emissions. Taking this into consideration, Seoul is pursuing green modeling of all buildings in the public sector. Also, we are applying greenhouse gas emissions cap for public buildings, and we are hoping to expand this emissions cap to the private buildings in the future. At the same time, to cut emissions from the building sector, newly constructed buildings are mandated to be zero energy buildings in Seoul. Next, please. And the next largest emitter is the transportation sector. And to lower the emissions from the transportation sector, we are doing our best to provide more green vehicles. However, despite our effort, the uptake of electric and hydrogen vehicles is still merely 1.4%. Since we had to find out why the supply of the green vehicles is still low, we asked the citizens what is the main reason for not purchasing the electric cars. And we found out that the lack of charging stations was the biggest obstacle when it comes to purchasing an EV. To overcome this challenge, Seoul is making the charging stations accessible for citizens by providing different types of chargers according to the locations where the chargers are installed. And the public sector is also taking the lead by making it mandatory to purchase zero energy vehicles for the public vehicle fleet. Also, to further lower our emissions from the transport sector, we plan to ban the new registration of internal combustion engine vehicles from 2035 to remove pollutants emitting vehicles from our roads. Next, please. Like I mentioned, emissions from buildings and transport sectors are, in fact, they're the main culprit, and they are actually directly connected to the energy consumption. Well, it is a problem because Seoul is still heavily dependent on fossil fuels such as oil and gas. Therefore, we need to increase the renewable energy production. Well, frankly speaking, Seoul is not in a situation where we can generate massive power using renewable energy sources because we are not like Copenhagen where they have like massive offshore wind power. Also, we don't have enough space in our city to install large-scale solar PVs. Therefore, we are trying to identify various renewable energy sources such as fuel cells, BIPVs, geothermal, hydrothermal energy, and small hydropower to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the energy sector. And Seoul is actually trying to play the role of test bed to facilitate the development of innovative energy technologies and foster the related industries. Next, please. Well, I have come to an end of my presentation. I wish I have more time to provide further details, but I believe the details can be discussed at the question and answer session. And thank you for your interest and listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yoonjin. It's quite nice to hear the Seoul's experience, and there surely is a lot that we can learn from the city that has gone through immense growth and changes in such a short period of time. So I think the link to that Seoul Climate Action 2050 can be provided from the city later on. So you can actually take a look at that document if you have any further questions. Now let's move on to the next presentation. Mr. David Duccini, the Chief Executive Officer of Origins Earth, and he will share with us how Paris measures its GHG emissions through the methodologies that they have developed. So David, please.
So good morning to all of you. So we will go through in the next few minutes to speaking about Origins Earth. So next, please. So we will speak how Paris we arrived to measure in continuous and real time GHG emission at any moment since several years, and to stay with the time that is short with the complex issues such as to measure GHG emission. I would like to focus on 4 aspects. So next please, and I will try to explain to you why we decided to go in this adventure. I will try to explain to you what we try to do, how we achieved this, because it was a long journey, and where we are doing and what we are doing there. So next one, I would like to speak about. So next, please. I would like to say why why is some figures? It seems to be crowded and full of numbers, but I would like that that you try with me to read. And you well know that today we consider that less than 2% of the planet's surface is occupied by big cities, but they are accountable for more than 70% of the emission on the planet. And when we are going to look what is made of the GHG ranking, we see that CO2 is playing a key roles of more than 70%, 72% if we see in France. And so it's clear that priority is to measure CO2 on the city, because 70% is account for city with 2% on the city, on the earth. But the issue is that today, and we can see on the right part of the slide, today, even if we arrive at national level to have a precise account of the emission, it takes time. It takes 18, 24, 36 months to arrive to have clear data about the emission. And what is worrying us, and it is that when you downscaling this emission, you start to face a problem of accuracy. Emissions are calculated in a precise time, in a precise way when you operate at the national level, but you go very fast to have big error when you go down. So next please. So we try to develop a first hybrid hardware and software solution to arrive to measure accurately CO2 emission. So we move from a complex situation in which we were very late in obtaining the data to attaining real time, nearly continuous, and we move to have emission measured by 50 up to 25% of error to have something that is very precise. We are around 5-8% of accuracy. And with the platform that we develop, we give to the possibility to the city to arrive to have a clear vision in a geographical and a spatial understanding of the emission. We are able to do this every day of the year, and we can monitor year by year what is the emission and the different scale. And we arrive to forecast and to do scenario in what is the evolution on the different sector, being for us the 7th sector that mostly impact the cities, that we will see in the next slide. So next one, please. So how we achieve this? We achieve with a complex project that was starting in 2017 with the city of Paris. We understood the need of the city of Paris, wanted to move from a calculation to a real-time monitoring. So we started a huge project with a laboratory that is called the Laboratory of Climate and Environmental Science in Paris, that is an expression of the National Research Center of France. And in a couple of years, we arrived to solve this issue, and we started to install a demonstrator at the large scale. So since 2019, today, we arrived to measure the emission in an area very large, bigger than 12 million inhabitants. And in 2020, we saw that the solution was so solid that we decided to transform this. So we spin off this research project to build a company being able to provide this solution all over the world. So on the right part of my slide, you see, and I will not enter in the detail, it was a complex issue because we went through to start with data, but then we started to develop a system to measure, and that was very important, because when you want to compensate poor data, the only way that you can do is to compensate with real observation, and the observation is giving the correct insight of what is your correct emission. And we developed a platform that was able to provide a clear view on a web-based site. So next one, please. And Next slide, please. And so today the origins is becoming reality. So every day, 17 stations measure constantly the GHG emission of Paris city and the large Paris. We operate millions of data, such as you can see in the figure in the slide. We arrive to connect together more than 60 open data database. But what is important is this combination of data and measurement. Where the data arrive, we will use the data, and when the data need to be correct, we use measure. So let me say that this triangle that is made by data, measurement, and modeling is creating a very solid triangle able to compensate at any time what is available, what you have available, and is giving to you clear pictures of your emission. As you can see, the system was classified, recognized by the WMO, and we were recognized by IGIS as one of the most consistent way to monitor emission all over the city. So next one, please. As you can see, and I put in the next two slides something very snapshot to understand what is the kind of figure that you can have. Here you have the monitoring that we did during the pandemic period, giving to us exactly the evolution over the time. And next one, please. And so precise that now the city of Paris started to use our real-time continuous way to monitor their emission, and their action plan is established based on real figures that we provide to the city every day. But what is important to share with you, and this is the next one, please, is that in fact we are ready to export this technology abroad, and we are ready to export this technology to other countries. Something that we did already in several cities in France. We are moving to Europe, and we are in several places in the Middle East. And we arrive, and I put for you, and you can then download this presentation to see some key elements, because we tested and we challenged the system to work even if data are poor or not sufficient enough. So today, to measure GHG emission is an evidence, is reality, and we will be pleased to try to challenge our technology in any country interested to export this technology that is giving completely new pictures of what is the evolution in GHG emission. So I try to summarize in few slides what was our story, that it was a 5-year story, and I will be available to answer to any question and to compensate the short time not giving to us the possibility to go too much in detail of this high technological solution. So thank you very much for your help, for your listening, and I will be open to the question next one.
Thank you very much for introducing us to your methodologies. It's quite comprehensive and quite sophisticated, and I'll be very keen to see how we can also be applied to our cities in Asia and Pacific. So thank you for that. Now we do have a representative from ADB's resident mission in India, Mr. Ashwin Biswanath. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but yes, Mr. Ashwin will give us a glimpse into the cross-sectoral low-carbon urban development that was piloted in the city of Visakhapatnam in India. So over to you, Ashwin.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Moon. Yeah, good morning to each one of you who are gathered here virtually. So I'm Ashwin from New Delhi. I'm very glad to present the case on Visakhapatnam. So we're piloting of a new low urban carbon development is being done. So let me jump to my slides quickly. Next slide, please. Yeah. So ADB is supporting implementation of the prestigious Visakhapatnam-Chennai Industrial Corridor Development Program, which falls in the east coast of southern part of India in state of Andhra Pradesh. The objective of the program is to have an increased contribution of manufacturing sector to the state's economy by enhancing the growth of the industrial corridor. ADB supported the state in capacity building for ease of doing business through a policy-based loan, and also a multi-tranche financing facility was provided for developing the industrial clusters. with all internal and infra facilities. And also a grant has been provided for implementation of a climate resilience pilot. So the MFF loan also supports the piloting climate resilient urban water supply. So let me move to the next slide, please. So Visakhapatnam, yeah, it is a coastal city and it is the largest city in the state of Andhra Pradesh, with a population of around 3 million. And it is the fifth busiest cargo port in India. So, and the city is known for its tourism, and also economy totally depends on fishing, navy, IT, farm and ferro-alloy plants. So it's a mix of industrial as well as a tourism economy. So being a coastal city, the city is a top equator dry with average rainfall of 1,100 mm per year precipitation. So city is dependent on the coal-based power plant for generation of the electricity. And it is also prone to the climate change disasters with hydrometeorological events are occurring on a regular basis. So through this project, ADB is trying or making its efforts to support the city to make it climate resilient through the pilot intervention. Next slide, please. So as I informed, this is a multi-sector industrial corridor project. So while we are developing industrial nodes, we also need to make sure that the people working in those industries should have the basic facilities where they reside. So we have planned 2 nodes under this project with Visakhapatnam, or I can call Vizag as in a short form. It's in the north part of the corridor, and is in the Chittoor node, which is in the southern part. So the Vizag city is a fairly developed one, and with the new industrial node is coming up near the city, it is supposed to create more stress on the present urban infrastructure. So the city is now getting financial support from the state government as well as the central government to improve its basic urban facility in the form of centrally for sponsored schemes like Smart City project as well as the Amrut. So ADP proposed some value addition and developed a pilot to implement a continuous pressurized water supply in part of the core area of the city with special focus on non-revenue water management so that water losses can be reduced. So ADB also planned to make the project climate resilient with incorporation of smart water meters at the household levels to ensure that operator has control of monitoring as well as a control of losses on a real-time basis. So the pilot area was divided into district metering areas, and each district metering area have a flow meter as well as a pressure meters at inlet as well as outlet on the need basis. And these meters were requiring the power supply, and so we decided to go for solar power. So each meters are fitted with a solar power unit, and in case of failure, there will be battery backup. And also there are automated user interfaces that have been used, and so that real data can be transmitted from all the DMS, which is also again a solar powered. So we're again replacing the pumping machineries for pumping the water to this area where new pumps are being used, which are energy efficient. And also they'll be using the clean energy, which I will be explaining in the next slide. So all these interventions that we are doing and for the 24/7 water supply project in the city of Visakhapatnam is through the loan with a high ownership from the city of the Visakhapatnam. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we have, apart from the loan, as I mentioned, there are sub-projects that are being implemented under the grant, which is being supported from Urban Climate Resilient Trust Fund, which helps the city to become more resilient to handle the climate change impacts. So one such a project is a floating solar plant on Megadrigata Reservoir. So this reservoir is one of the water sources for the city. And in order to produce clean energy and also to reduce evaporation of water, a portion of the reservoir has been considered for establishing this floating solar plant. So these are the real images that you can see, and also on the Google map you can see that only a small portion, that is only 1% of the area has been used for this purpose. And the plant will be producing a power of 3 megawatt. And this plant is now being linked to the grid. And the Vizag Municipal Corporation is considering this plant or power that is being generated as a source for the power required for the new pumping station that is being established under this 24/7 water supply pilot. So with that sense, we can just say that whatever the water supply pilot that is being implemented, it will be a low carbon urban infrastructure with the help of this intervention under the UCCITF. And also Vizag municipality will be able to save about $400,000 annually because of this solar plant once it is connected to the grid. Next slide, please. We do have another intervention in the form of lake rejuvenation and watershed development. And in the lake of Madalsola Lake, that is getting impacted due to entry of sewage from the nearby urban settlement, and also the area of the lake was shrinking rapidly. So in this project, we plan to divert the sewage, and also desilting of the lake was done. And the stormwater drains that was choked and which was so runoff, which was not being able to reach the lake, that has been all the blockages have been removed, and then improved the stormwater drains have been constructed. And also we provided recharge pits as well as the contour trenches. This is helping to improve the quality as well as the quantity of water entering the lake. So we also have done the plantation adjacent to the lake, which is now acting as a carbon sink. So next slide, please. So another another intervention under this grant is a low carbon sub-project, which is now proposed for the city in the form of procurement of the e-vehicles. Well, city is managing their solid waste efficiently, but the equipment required were not adequate. So the sub-project proposed to provide some 65 three-wheelers for the city. Sorry, I think there is some typo. I think it's a 65 e-rickshaws for solid waste collection. Also, as well as 10 three-wheelers for passenger transport. So these e-vehicles will be helping the city to collect the solid waste on daily basis from door to door. And also the passenger vehicle will be ferrying the tourist along the beach road, which is one of the major attraction in the city of Visakhapatnam. So this project will also going to reduce the carbon footprint in the urban operations with the ending maybe by the end of this year. So next slide, please. So yeah, what we have learned from this project so far, I think since the project is still under implementation, so I can just be able to provide my thoughts. So cities integrated actions combining with both mitigation as well as adaptation competencies complementing the ADB loan. And also the UCCF grant is playing a very catalytic role, which has made this pilot a very high potential for scaling up as well as replication in other cities. Also, we noted the very high ownership by Visakhapatnam Municipal Corporation, which also gives a priority to climate resilience. In fact, they've already established a unit within the city corporation for climate resilience, so which is a very noteworthy. And for the UCCF grant projects, we did wanted to understand what was the market response. And while there was a very good response for the floating solar plants as well as the watershed, but there were some challenges we faced for e-vehicles, and there was some change in scope going on continuously. And finally now we are able to award the contract, and I hope the vehicles will be flying on the roads shortly by the end of this year. And with the completed project, that is a floating solar, we are able to achieve about 1,500 tons carbon equivalent per annum that is being awarded. So even though it is a very minuscule, but so it's a good beginning. So yeah, next slide, please. So So that's all from my side. I would like to thank you all for hearing me patiently, and sorry if I have overshoot my time. I would like to convey my gratitude to Mr. Manoj Sharma, the Chief of Urban Sector Group, and he was the architect of this VCIC project. He was a project officer who developed this. Also, special thanks to Mr. Virendra Sharma and Ms. Ogju for all their support. Let me stop here. Back to you, Ms. Moon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. Yeah, it is very highly encouraging to see this multi-sectoral approach to low carbon transformation taking place in our project cities. I'm sure there are, just as you had mentioned, I think there are lots of lessons that can be adopted to other cities in the Asia and Pacific. Thank you to all our presenters and keeping the time as well. So now we're at 11:08 now. So we have about, I think we can spare maybe another 2 minutes and say that we have 10 minutes for question and answer. So without further ado, I will request some of these questions to be answered. I did share, and I think Okju has done as well, some questions that have been raised by our audience from the audience. I'm not so sure whether I should go ahead and ask the questions. So let's see. Okay, we'll start with the city of Seoul for now. So Yunjin, if you're able to put on your camera and be able to answer some of these questions, I'll just give you all the questions that came up, and perhaps you will be able to answer them in 2-3 minutes or so. The first question is Seoul also envisaging energy saving measures, which switching off buildings light after 10 p.m., for instance? Another question, to achieve low carbon targets, did the city also initiate measures related to updating land use zoning plans? City and developing countries are challenged on imposing cleaner vehicles, such as e-taxis, as the regulatory framework plus incentives would depend on the national government. How did Seoul overcome these challenges? For Seoul green buildings, one of the problems is providing incentives to building owners. What incentive program is Seoul providing to them? Has Seoul considered adopting the technology of solar power firms, which will turn windows into solar panels? And if you can also maybe touch upon how this Mateo carbon from origins can be used in Seoul's context, or that may be the question for David. Okay, so over to you, Yunjin.
Okay, well, thank you for the questions. And that's a lot of questions, and I believe there's a lot of things for me to answer. Well, I'll try to be as short as possible. Well, first, starting with the energy saving. Well, we do have energy saving programs, although it's not really focused on switching off lights. Although switching off light is more of a public campaign that is done annually. But we do have a program called Eco Mileage Program, which is to encourage the energy saving of the citizens by providing incentives to the amount of energy reduced during a specific time period. And this is actually making a great result, because we are around 1/3 of our citizens are in this program, and they are recognizing the importance of saving energy at households by changing their behaviors. Also, we are doing the environmental education starting from the elementary schools. So from the younger generation, we are trying to make sure that they have the acknowledgement, or they have the understanding of the importance of protecting or tackling climate change. And the second one is about the land use and zoning. I don't think we have any specific land zoning plans related to low carbon. Well, I checked with Sir Chang about that, and I don't think we have it, but I will try to provide further details about it after this presentation, this session. And about the green vehicles, well, of course, Seoul is a local government, and we sometimes have difficulties working with the national government, but it's a fortunate thing that we have had the Seoul Ordinance on climate change and environmental issues since early 2000s, I think. So we do not face a lot of difficulties trying to provide some regulatory framework on the green vehicles And for the incentives, of course, Seoul is working with the national government to provide, and actually the share of Seoul and national government is like 50-50% when it comes to providing incentives for purchasing of a green car in Korea. But for the charging stations and the EV chargers, it's 100% Seoul's money, the city's money, to provide incentives for the citizens. Next, about the building owner incentives. Well, we don't have any incentives for the energy saving for the building owners. However, we do provide zero interest loans for building owners if they are to renovate their buildings to become more energy efficient by doing this BRP program. And for the building owners who would like to construct their building, zero energy building, we provide some tax exemption and we kind of lower the limitations of the construction limits so that they can construct higher like buildings. And next one is about the solar film. Well, we do not have the solar film in use right now, but actually Seoul has the building integrated PV technologies. So we have these construction materials that can actually generate power from the solar power. So our building also has the BIPVs on the outside, so it means that we can generate some solar power. And about the meteor carbon, I don't think it is not applicable to Seoul's situation. I hope I answered most of the questions.
Thank you so much, Yunjin. Yes, it was very comprehensive. Since we don't have much time, I'll just go on to David. So David, some questions for you. How are you able to differentiate between emissions and GHG already in the atmosphere? Second question, what are the measures that Paris has put in place to reduce emissions based on the data you've provided to the city? And another question, what are the measures that Paris has put on? I think this is the same question, sorry. And have your methodologies were being tested in other cities? If cities of Asian countries expressed interest in piloting, what would be likely partnership assistance of Origins Earth? So those questions are for you, David. And if you can make it brief, that will be appreciated. Over to you.
Yeah. Yes, so a good question, and in very short time we can say. So first of all, what we do is a combination of measurement and atmospheric model. That is the reason why we arrived to calculate anthropogenic emission, biogenic emission, transport emission, and background emission. That means that we arrive to break down the composition of the global concentration in the atmosphere thanks to a mix of measurement and modeling. At the end of the day, we do a three-dimensional modeling of the canopy of CO2 over the city of Paris. And so we arrive to calculate exactly what is the weight of each one of the components that I said. So this is the first one, and I can go deeper in detail for the people they want with speaking directly with them if they want later on, because it's quite scientific as approach. The second is speaking about measurement. This is quite interesting because we saw two things. The first of all is spatial and geographical localization of the area of the city, the large Paris, on which was a priority to work in building renovation. So focusing on the area on which the building were the more emitted was given the possibility to the city of Paris to incentivize and to support the citizens wanted to rehabilitate housing in the place where the houses were more emitting. So this was quite important to localize geographically what were the main source of emission. And the second one is to mobility. So traffic is one of the major issue, and giving the visibility in real time of what was the impact in the changing in the lifestyle of the citizen of the city is the best way to bring the citizen with you. Let me say, it's a matter of if we want to modify the lifestyle, you have to give the evidence to the citizen that what you ask to them to modify in their lifestyle using a different way of mobility to cross the city is giving an impact. And you cannot wait 2 years to show that maybe what they did was correct. So if we ask to our people to change the way they operate, we have to give evidence that what they do is correct. So is mobility and residential. One is spatial, and the other is in term of let me say human behavior. And is it possible to multiply abroad? Yes, we already tried and crash tested the technology in a very poor data area such as the Cyprus Island. So we jumped from the mainland of Europe to a very complicated situation, and we arrived with really poor data as input, compensate with the measurement and the modeling to arrive to measure. So yes, we think that we arrive to establish our solution in any city around the world. In fact, we started to work here and there, and so yes, certainly is possible.
Thank you so much, David, for those answers. So with a very little time left, we have a very good question for Ashwin. On the floating solar plant component, did you encounter any pushback from the local communities and environmental activists? If yes, how was it resolved? Second question, in terms of operations and maintenance, how would you compare it with the land-based solar plants? Is the floating solar's O&M less or more complicated and less or more costly? So if you can answer that in 1 minute, that would be highly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So on any pushback from the local communities, maybe I am joined this project or doing the implementation, and as long as I am here, I didn't face anything. So we are getting more encouragement than these pushbacks. So even if there would have been any pushbacks, it would be easy to resolve because the environmental benefit that is this project is going to accrue, that is far than what detrimental effect is going to have. So the only part of the lake is being covered, and the lake ecology is also not getting affected. And also it is going to produce a clean energy. So this really, I think, will not face much of the pushback from any of the communities. That's what I feel. And the second question is in the operation and maintenance. Yeah, I do feel that there will be some cost will be on the higher side, and also it will be more complicated since it is a floating solar, because floats has to be, I think, has to be managed and maintained, and with all the anchorings and all. So unlike what we do on a land-based plant. However, when we do analyze the life cycle cost, including the land requirement and also the cost, being in India, the cost of the land is very high in cities. And because of that, I think when we do analyze the life cycle cost along with the environmental benefit that is going to be accrued by this project, so I feel that overall it should be much less when compared to the land-based plant. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ashwin, and for being very brief as well, complete but brief. So with this, we will be ending the session 1 of the workshop, and I will now pass it over to Okju to moderate the session 2. Thank you very much to our presenters, and you may be hearing from our audience for more questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Okju.
Thank you so much, Chris and the presenters, for so engaging presentations and a fascinating discussion. So obviously there are many more questions, compared to the time slot available. So even after this deep dive workshop, we are responding to all the questions. So thank you so much. So let me open the session 2 dedicated to the specific urban energy nexus solutions. In this session, we have 3 projects of ADB to be presented. The 3 projects, in addition to, by the way, the session 1 Visakhapatnam project by Ashwin, they are all supported by the Urban Climate Change Regional Trust Fund, UCC-RTF, administered by the Urban Sector Group of Asian Development Bank. With the contributions from the government of United Kingdom and Switzerland and Rockefeller Foundation, the Trust Fund supports developing cities in Asia to reduce the risk from climate change and disasters, particularly for the poor and the vulnerable. As you can see here in the slide, The Trust Fund supports over 60 multi-sector projects in more than 40 cities. And today we have a pleasure to have speakers working with UCC RTF and ADB through the selected 4 projects. The session 2 will demonstrate how low carbon urban energy solutions and their core benefits can help cities to address the livabilities of cities and the well-being of citizens, particularly through taking an integrated and cross-sectoral approach. So, for the interest of time, I would like to invite Kama, the first presenter. She is the principal environmental specialist of ADB, and she will present urban air quality and the clean heating solution. So she is currently the focal person for the air quality management in the environmental thematic group of SCCC. And under this role, she is leading a TA on strengthening knowledge and the actions for air quality improvement that she will present today. So Kama, over to you. The floor is now yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Okju. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for this opportunity to share information about this project that we are working on in Erdenet city in Mongolia. Next slide, please. So just to give a very quick background, this is the TA which I am managing, which Okju had just mentioned. And the focus of the TA is basically to prepare clean air action plans in 7 cities in 5 countries. And as you can see in the red box, we have Erdenet city in Mongolia as one of the 7 cities. And we would also like to thank the biggest donor for this TA project, which is the UCC RTF. And then we also have the People Republic of China Fund, which is also a donor for this TA, and ADB's internal TA resources. Next slide, please. So under the TA, since the overall aim is to prepare city-level clean air action plans and then convert at least one of them to an investment project, we've carried out a lot of studies to understand the existing air pollution situation in each of the 7 cities. So this slide shows the situation in Erdenet city, and then you can see the different sources of pollution and the pollution levels. And if I can draw your attention again to the red circle, so you can see it's the industrial sector which contributes the most to the pollution in the city. And the biggest part of that is the power station, the thermal power station. There is a copper plant and there are heat-only boilers. So as we all know, Erdenet and in general, Mongolia is a very cold country. So heating is a very important necessary thing for the cities and the country as a whole. So therefore, energy for heating is also very important. But currently, it's all very heavily dependent on coal. So therefore, there is a lot of air pollution and at the same time, a lot of carbon emissions. Next slide, please. So now if you look at the current heating energy profile within Erdenet city, and you can see a map of the city here, and the area which is darker in color, this is mainly the Ger area, which is sort of the area where you have the traditional Mongolian tent kind of houses. And then the ones, the area where you can see the red lines, that's mainly the area where there are actually apartment buildings. And you can see that there are 2, the CHP, which is the central heating plant. So there are 2 main central heating plants. There are 4 heat-only boilers. All of this is currently all coal-based. So there's a lot of usage of coal. And only about 40% of the households are connected to the central heating plant. So a lot of the households are using sort of individual stoves within the homes and within the gers in order to, for cooking as well as for heating. And you can see the heating season, that's when the heating energy is really used intensively, is from September to May, because it's a very cold city and country, as I mentioned earlier. And if I can draw your attention to the yellow star, Davad Park, so that's where we are trying to pilot the introduction of a clean heating solution. So currently everything is coal-based, and we are trying to bring in sort of clean energy and renewable energy, but doing it in a step-by-step manner. Next slide, please. So there is another TA, this TA 9941 on supporting renewable energy development. And this is being managed by my colleague Shannon, who is a project officer in the East Asia department. And she is actually preparing an investment project on supporting renewable energy development in Mongolia. And under the TA, as well as the loan, there are 4 outputs. And the 4th output is focus on advancing heating technologies, particularly focusing in the Gair area and trying to bring in renewable energy, and basically to reduce the use of coal for heating purposes. And ADB has already been working in Mongolia, and we've had quite a successful intervention in Ulaanbaatar, where we had a policy-based loan to reduce, the usage of coal and improve the situation with air pollution as well as with carbon emissions. So we have gained some experience from that project, and then we are looking to also work in other cities and other areas of Mongolia. And so basically under this TA, study is being carried out to help influence and generate future investment projects which are focused on introducing clean heating solutions in the different cities and different parts of Mongolia. So specifically under this upcoming investment project on supporting renewable energy development, we are currently working on trying to access a $5 million grant money from JFJCM, which is the Japan Fund for Joint Crediting Mechanism, and add that to the proposed $50 million loan. And we are proposing to use the $5 million grant to introduce the clean heating solution in the Davad Park in the yellow star area, which was shown in the previous slide. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do in this pilot test? So basically, we are going to be, we are looking to focus on a couple of government buildings, such as schools, the cultural center, local municipal offices. And then currently the heating system that is being used here is a coal-based boiler. And you can see a very high use of raw coal, 400 tons of raw coal is being used per year. And it's not just the aspect of using coal currently in the technology, it's the aspect of the inefficiencies and the poor operation and maintenance, which is currently the situation. And even for the water to be circulated, the hot water for heating, it's not treated water. So there are a lot of issues of corrosion. So there are a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of leakage, which is happening. So basically, the solution that we would like to introduce through this pilot is to first of all, improve the efficiencies, improve the O&M, so there's less loss of heat along the way, and therefore there is less need for consumption of coal. That's one. And the other is to actually shift from using coal for the heating to actually try to tap on the geothermal or air source heat. So this is something which we are currently studying, and we are trying to identify which option would technically be more feasible. So however, the coal boiler itself has to be operated with electricity, and the electricity is being generated by a coal-fired power plant. So that aspect currently is still a challenge. However, the actual heating, the source of heat that we are trying to shift to either geothermal or air source, and overall just improving the O&M and improving, modernizing the system and improving the efficiencies. So that's what we are proposing to do with the $5 million grant money, which we are still currently working on trying to apply for to JFJCM. So this is a work in progress at the moment. Next slide, please. So just to switch gears a little bit, I would like to highlight the value of the having technical assistance project in influencing future programs and projects. And in particular, I would like to share our experience with this TA on strengthening knowledge and actions for air quality improvement. So over the course of carrying out studies for these 7 cities and understanding the challenges, what you see in the yellow boxes on the left side of the screen, these are all the different challenges that we see exist within cities in Asia. And then on that basis, we realized that we can actually do a lot. There is a lot of opportunity for ADB to play a more active role in trying to address these challenges. And therefore, as a result of that, we decided to initiate a new program called the Asia Clean Blue Sky Program. And basically, the objective of the program is for ADB to play a more active role and be a leader in air quality management within the region. So this is the bigger program. And then in particular, through the process of implementing the activities under the TA, we were also able to generate demand from our developing member countries, for addressing air pollution issues, carbon emission issues, and also other urban development issues. And in particular, we received a request for help from the Ministry of Climate Change in Pakistan to prepare the National Clean Air Action Plan. So we were able to provide support in preparing this National Clean Air Plan. And then we also received a request, the case that I presented right now on Erdenet. This request came as a result of the TA activities and the relationship that we were able to establish with the Erdenet mayor and the municipality. And as we go along finalizing the Clean Air Action Plan, we expect that we will receive more expressions of interest from our city stakeholders and the DMCs for support in investment projects. So I just wanted to highlight that there is a lot of value in implementing TAs and in influencing future actions to reduce air pollution as well as carbon emissions. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Okju.
Thank you so much, Karma, for the very insightful presentation. It's great to hear how a project on air quality could help a pipeline of clean energy project, helping moving away from coal, which directly tackles a principal origin of air pollution of the city. Is really great. So by the way, participants, do not hesitate to use the chat box for any questions or comments to share with all the participants. Our next speaker, let me invite next speaker. The speaker is Ms. Bo Chuen Chanok. She is a transport expert and currently coordinate e-mobility pilot component of ADB TA project, Transport for All. And the project promotes the deployment of various types of e-mobility as a climate resilient and low carbon transport modality by supporting national and city strategies and the pilots and the capacity development in collaboration with UCC, RTF, and ADB, of course, and several cities. The water taxi she presented today is one of the pilot cases. So Bo, please go ahead. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Okju. I'm Chuen Chanok from Perter Consulting, and today I would like to present the deployment of electric water taxi in Indonesia. Moving on to the next slide, I would like to give the background on this project. So this project is an ADB technical assistant to experience benefits and challenges of electric vehicle deployment. Under this project, we have a total of 16 electric boats, 2 in Indonesia, 9 in the Philippines, and 5 in Thailand. Moving on to the next slide is the water taxi in Batam. So why we are choosing this area? Firstly, the boat run in a fixed route with a short distance of 5 kilometers. And secondly, the size of the boat is not too big to convert into electric engine. And more importantly, the water taxi cooperative or the boat captain, they are facing with an increasing oil price. And lastly, there is a possibility to upscale the electrification of 125 boats in the area. The next slide is the benefit of electric boat that we have learned from this project. Firstly is the operational cost of an electric boat, which is at $1.7 per trip, comparing to around $7 by petrol boat. Secondly, also the maintenance cost is a lot lower. Since 6 months of operating the electric boat, there is no maintenance cost need at all, comparing to around $300 per year for a conventional boat. And lastly, there are some health benefits as well. The electric boat is silent compared to noisy petrol engine. And there is also no smoke or air pollution from the electric boat as well. Moving on to the next slide is the challenges that we have faced for the deployment of electric boat. The first one is the capital cost of electric boat, which is around $25,000, which is 3 times higher than normal conventional boat. So that's the reason why this project funded 50% of the capital cost to the pilot boat under this project. Secondly, is the speed of the electric boat, which is rather slower than petrol boat. The speed is 15 kilometers per hour compared to 40 kilometers per hour by petrol boat. So what we can do in the future is to improve the size of the engine and battery. And the last one is the maintenance or to repair the boat. If the problem happened to normal boat like petrol boat, the boat captain can fix it locally or by asking their friend. But if there is a problem with electric boat, they need to ask advice from expert to fix technical problem. So what we can do to overcome this issue is to give training to the boat user so they gain knowledge and confidence in using the electric boat. Lastly, the last slide, I would like to show the next step that we would like to continue after the pilot project. Of course, we want to improve the speed to optimize the boat operation. And secondly, we would like to upgrade the infrastructure of charging station. We want to have the fast charger to take only 3 hours of charging instead of 8 hours by normal charger. And lastly, the local government will also support in terms of tax reduction for passenger by electric boat and also provide land to install charging station as well. I would like to end my presentation with a video to give you a better experience of electric water taxi in Indonesia. I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you.
Kita adalah orang kepulauan dan transportasi laut sangat penting bagi kehidupan kami. Pekerjaan saya sebagai kapten atau tekong kapal bot pancung Sekupang. Di Sekupang, kami ada memiliki kapten kapal sekitar 30 sampai 40 orang. Laut adalah jalan kami untuk mengantarkan orang-orang dan barang-barang ke satu tempat ke tempat yang lain. Kalau transportasi kami ini banyak sekali yang menggunakannya, kayak para pekerja, kayak guru-guru, murid-murid itu kan banyak juga yang sekolah di Batam dan di belakang Padang. Mereka sangat sering sekali memakai transportasi kami. Kemungkinan kalau minyak kan ini makin bisa aja semakin tahun bisa menghilang gitu kan. Ya salah satunya ya ini aja lah bisa dipakai kayak elektronik, menggunakan listrik, ya itu aja. Lagian pun ini pun udah nggak menimbulkan polusi, kesehatan lebih baik gitu Pak.
Dengan menggunakan e-board, saya merasa sangat nyaman dalam perjalanan, tidak terganggu dengan kebisingan mesin. Mesinnya sangat nggak ada suara sama sekali gitu ya. Kita bisa ngobrol-ngobrol santai di dalam boardnya, jadi tidak pengaruh efek mesinnya itu tidak ada sama sekali.
Yes, thank you so much, Bo, for the very engaging presentation and the video as well. So we see the video is still work in progress. We will look forward to see the final version when it is completed. But anyway, the video brings us to the very beautiful city Batam. I think your presentation gives many lessons, and at the same time, the issues that we have to continue to work on. I see Pam, the ADB project officer over the TA, is with us, and I hope she could share her insightful views and the recommendations, later. So now we have the last presentation of this session on the PPP Center in the Philippines. We have Joe Barroco and Mr. Mark Brandon here. Joe is an energy expert and ex-CEO, and now working as a financial consultant. The co-presenter, Mark Brandon, is a civil engineer and the project development officer of a PPP Center. So they will present the broad background of urban energy portfolio of a PPP Center and the 4 energy projects currently in pipeline with the support of ADB and the UCC RTF. Joe, please go ahead, your presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Okchu and the ADB team for inviting me and Mark to present. Next slide, please. So the clean, resilient urban energy is a top priority in the Philippines, and for 3 main reasons. The first one is urban population is really growing rapidly. The second is the Philippines is the most vulnerable country in the world to climate change. So several reports indicate that it's not only one of the most, is the most vulnerable country to climate change. And third, the energy urban demand is really going very, very rapidly. Next slide, please. So there are tremendous opportunities, and with opportunities also come challenges. So the first one is the energy demand is growing tremendously. So that's both an opportunity, but also a challenge, because how can we meet that tremendous demand with clean and resilient energy? The second one is, clean energy solutions, clean urban energy solutions are more capital intensive than the fossil fuel solutions. But when you look at the cost over the useful life of the project, the cost is much lower. So for example, waste to energy per megawatt might be $3 to $4 million, as opposed to diesel. Diesel per megawatt is only $500,000, but the fuel cost of diesel makes diesel far more expensive than waste to energy solutions. We could do the same comparison with solar in combination with batteries, where the solution investment cost might be only 1.5. So this is a challenge. The third challenge is is the short election cycles of the local governments. So in the Philippines, it's 3 years. And the reality is the tenure of the asset might be 10 to 25 years. So there's a mismatch between 3 years where the local government is in power and the life of the asset. The fourth is a tremendous opportunity, is the opportunity to come up with local public-private partnerships that can address many of these challenges. Can we, next slide, please? Okay, so just a brief overview on public-private partnerships. So PPPs are, it's an agreement between the public and private sector to deliver public infrastructure. What are the advantages of PPPs for the government and for the private sector? Well, for the government is the fact that they can deliver the infrastructure without spending their resources, because the investment is made by the private sector. On the other hand, the private sector can access very good opportunities that otherwise will not access without the government help. So for example, in a waste to energy project, the private sector cannot access the municipal waste without the help of the government, or in projects where it requires to obtain large tracts of land without the eminent domain of the government. The private sector cannot access those opportunities. We would like to thank you, the UCCRTF, for helping the PPP Center to identify and develop several climate resilient initiatives that we are in the process of developing. The next slide, please. So we have here just some examples of projects that are being developed, urban energy projects that are being developed. These are fall in two major categories. One is green buildings, and the other one is waste to energy. And if you notice, both waste to energy and green buildings are capital intensive. So even if so it's difficult for local governments to have the budget, and even if they have the budget, they prefer to allocate it to social infrastructure that can yield results within the 3 years of their term. So these are very good, these are infrastructure that are needed and can be deployed with the help of the private sector. We are also developing several business models, urban energy, PPPs. This is just an example of energy efficiency. So in the case of energy efficiency, energy efficiency or investing in electromechanical assets is not really the core competency of the local government. So they can have the private sector do it for them. And in return, the private sector gets a long-term contract with the government, but they need to guarantee savings, energy savings. Next slide. So just to finalize, the key lessons that we have learned is, coordination is critical between the public and the private sector, especially coordination medium, long term, and that can be sometimes a challenge. The second major learning is sustainable, clean urban energy solutions are more affordable than the fossil fuel alternatives, but the investment typically requires a higher investment. The third key lesson is there's tremendous opportunities in developing local PPPs. So this is a tremendous area of opportunity. And fourth, sustainable policy support is crucial. So we also would like to thank the DOE, Department of Energy, the Renewable Energy Management Division, and also the Energy Efficiency Division, and also the Department of Finance. Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank you, the PPP Center, the ADB team, the UCC RTF, and Okju and Chris for this opportunity. So I know the time is short. See, you have my email and you have Mark's email. Feel free to email us directly for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe. So we are sorry for giving you only 8 minutes, for this presentation. But I think this public project, which facilitated the private participation in delivering the essential urban infrastructure is very well noted. And also it's very great to see the 4 energy project in pipeline, 3 waste to energy project and 1 green building project. So they are all low carbon energy solutions, but their core benefit, environmental, social, are also very critical to make cities more clean, healthy, and livable. Knowing that cities account for 80% of waste, carbon emissions, and also energy consumption. So hope all the 4 projects can be successfully launched and operational and serve as an excellent example for further replication in other cities. So now we have all the 3 presentations under session 2 done, and let me open the floor for the Q&A session. So dear participants, please don't hesitate to put your additional questions or comment in the chat box. So while waiting the comments on the PPP Center, the rest of presentation, so maybe we can start from Karma's presentation. So Karma, we have 2 questions. The first question is how ADBTA project, like the project you presented, how ADBTA can facilitate demand from DMCs for investment in clean energy. That is the first question. And the second question is the financial and non-financial benefit of a project, including the Ethernet project, which are implementing for Mongolian climate change and the low carbon development. So Kama, could you give your concise response, please?
Yes, thank you very much for the question, Okju. So for the technical assistance, I think the main value that we can bring in order to influence the demand from DMCs is equipping them with the information. So that's what we did under this TA, where we carried out the studies in a systematic manner and helped the city authorities or the government agencies understand what are the key issues, sources of pollution, and also then recommend solutions. And then I think an advantageous position that ADB is that we interact or we work in many countries. And we also have access to our partners. Several of them are from the developed countries where there's already sort of advanced technology. So we have this advantage of the convening where we can bring, different stakeholders to the table, and we can show our developing member countries and the city authorities the kind of solutions that are being implemented in other cities and other countries. So basically equipping them with knowledge, providing the solutions, and then of course, ultimately, because ADB is a development bank, then we also have the advantage where we can actually convert some of those recommendations into action through investment projects. So I think that is one of the biggest value where we can showcase to our DMCs that it's possible, that it's not impossible, to improve the situation. On the second question with regard to the financial and non-financial benefits, and thanks to Joe, I think as part of your presentation, you kind of partly answered the question. So as he mentioned, I think currently a lot of the technology around fossil fuel base is cheaper than the new, modern technology. But then it's the long run, the cost over the long run. When you calculate all of that, the entire life cycle, then I think the clean energy costs and the advanced technology and improved efficiency, and there is more automation. Now there is a lot of monitoring that you can do just remotely, through online systems. So I think overall, the financial cost turns out to be much cheaper. And actually, with the increase in uptake of new technology like, solar energy, wind energy, the economies of scale gets better and better. So the cost is actually reducing over time. So I think financially, it is better to adopt renewable energy. And non-financial benefits, there's a whole gamut of non-financial benefits. You have the health impacts, so there's much better health of the people. People are much more productive. You have, less time spent on health costs to deal to address the health concerns of people. Better lifestyle. You have more opportunity to go outside if the air is, clean. You want to go outside. So much healthier lifestyle. More potential for tourism. So it's sort of endless, actually, the non-financial benefits. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much.
The question.
Yes. So the multi-sectoral integrated approach provide multi benefits. So thank you for the response. And now we have for Bo, we have one question about the charging stations of e-vehicles. For the case of Seoul, is 100% paid by city, and both national and the city government provide incentives and a subsidy for the e-vehicles. Do you see this also being feasible in the city of Batam?
Thank you for this suggestion. Actually, it's a good lesson learned from Seoul. I have to pass this question to the Batam mayor. He is better, can answer this question. But just would like to give you a background of this project, that the charging station is invested by the boat builder or the boat manufacturer. And what I observe is that if the charging station is invested by private sector, they take a good care of the charging station, like to maintain or repair the problem. However, if the charging station is provided by government, I mean, if they are an efficient government, they're gonna take good care of it. But if they are not as efficient as it should be, then some problem can happen to the charging station. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bo. I think there are many more questions, but for the interest of time, let's move on the third and the last question to Joe. So this is about the regulatory framework for cities to enter into PPP. Do you think, in the Philippines, those regulatory system is sufficient or enough? And for energy project of a PPP center are reduced GHG emission, part of the criteria for selecting technology. Thank you.
I think there's the bulk of the PPP regulatory policy is already in place. Of course, there are certain areas that need more work, such as, for example, accounting issues, how to, for example, account for energy savings, because you don't see the savings, you only see the cost, right? But overall, the most of the regulatory policy is already there, and now is an issue of coming up with new business models and working with the local government to deploy those solutions. We see a lot of potential over the next 5-10 years, and it's also an issue of the populations in the urban areas to actually push for those solutions. So, for example, resilience. Those climate change disasters are irregular, can only happen in maybe next year, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years. So there needs to be some support and push from the local population to make sure that those projects are implemented immediately, instead of just passing those projects to the next to the next government.
Okay, thank you so much. It's very well noted. So again, sorry for this time limitation. Today we have now all 6 presentations and Q&A session. Now let me invite Dr. Virendra Sharma, Principal Urban Development Specialist of ADB, and he is also managing the Urban Climate Change Resilience Trust Fund since 2016. So let me request him to share his insight and takeaways from today's deep dive workshop, as a concluding remark, and also share overall lessons and the catalytic role of UCC ITF for this urban energy nexus to make cities more livable and low carbon. Virendra, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Okchu. And I think this has been an exciting, 1.5 hours going through these presentations and structured around the 2 sessions that you've done. And I'll try my best to capture the synthesis and the takeaways, of course, in the time that is limited. The first thing, I think the objective of the whole ASEF and this deep dive workshop to maximize energy urban nexus for making cities more livable. I think this was articulated initially by Manoj, setting the scene for this whole deep dive workshop. And I feel that the objective has been largely met. Through the 2 sessions. The first session on aligning urban energy solutions with low carbon urban development highlights the importance of proper measuring and tracking of emissions. And I think this is really fundamental because most of our DMCs are still to do their emission profiles. And I look back at the presentations that were done on Seoul, for example, the 69% coming from buildings. Usually we underestimate that, 19% from transport. And despite the fact that Seoul is still using a very conventional measure of GHG emissions, it has got a definite action plan on moving ahead with the low carbon development. I think the next presentation on the Paris City by Origins Earth by David on GHG measurement was really interesting because it challenges conventional methodologies on GHG measurement. And I think perhaps for the first time, I'm seeing this real-time monitoring of GHG based on sensors and the value of having geographical and spatial coverage of GHG emissions. I think he has very well articulated how this impacts on the policies and how the city is able to take decisions, because ultimately I think all this work around GHG measurement is about what actions you take, whether they are at a policy level, regulatory level, or on the ground. And I think that's been illustrated by the work that has been done in Paris, and hope that this is replicated. Then moving ahead to what Ashwin presented from Visakhapatnam, India, a really interesting case of 3 megawatt floating solar. He also highlighted, the savings that the city is seeing from this. I think of course, beyond the GHG emissions, it's the energy that feeds back into and replaces the conventional fossil fuel energy that is there. And then, of course, he also discussed the comparatives between the cost of floating solar versus land. And again, the issue of co-benefits comes in. And I think your second session on integrated solutions for livable energies brought out this issue very well, because of course we are saying that how do we factor renewable energy and energy efficiency in the economic and financial analysis. We know the benefits. Karma very well mentioned this, and through her study, through her presentation on ERDINET, how air pollution has been used and as an entry point to address some very core fundamental energy issues there, and how this helps in monitoring emissions, but also the energy. But the underlying message I got from that session is, how do you start valuing co-benefits, whether they are health, pollution, or other co-benefits, to match with the economic and financial analysis that is done. And this was also articulated very well by Jose in the PPP Center presentation, where he mentioned the cost over the life cycle, the upfront capital cost, who is willing to put in this upfront capital cost, and who does benefit from the longer term operation and maintenance costs. I think, how do we factor this into our projects? He also mentioned about green buildings and waste to energy, some very important areas. And finally, I think, again, the same message was articulated by Chen Chunak, both from the water taxis, where, you know, we have this target of introducing these boards and improvising it. She very clearly mentioned the challenges of the e-taxis, and not just the capital cost, which is currently being met by the Urban Climate Change Trust Fund technical assistance, but what happens in terms of operation and maintenance, and the benefits that arise to the communities who are far-flung and have to use these boats in comparison to the fossil fuel boats. So I would say that, you know, the overall message that we were trying to deliver, we know that cities account for 80% of the waste, carbon emissions, and energy consumption. Energy is a lifeline service which is essential for human health, safety, and economy. And this deep dive workshop has very well highlighted the resilience in context of energy, urban systems, presented both policy and strategy opportunities, discussed governance of urban energy issues, financial cost and technical solutions, as well as the barriers to building more resilient urban energy system. So I would really, you know, want to thank the 6 speakers and their co-associates for their, you know, insightful presentations, for the, you know, the audience for their challenging questions. Both our moderators, Chris and Okchu, for you know, setting up this session, Manoj for setting the context of this whole session, and of course I should not forget the back-end team, which, you know, makes it possible, because they are the ones who ensure that everything works perfectly. So thank you very much, and I think I've really enjoyed this session. Many takeaways, many messages. I've tried to synthesize this. So back to you, Okchu. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you so much, Virinda, for the very detailed, you know, synthesis, capturing the best part of a deep dive workshop and the lessons. Yes, so sorry, the time is limited, but we will, you know, with all the speakers, presenters, we will get back to you more detailed responses to all of your questions. And so on behalf of ADB Urban Sector Group and the UCC RTF, thank you so much again, all speakers, presenters, and the participants. And also would like to express our particular thanks to Gino, Karen, Rick, Joy, Raymond, and Michelle, Mark, and Rindia, and Pacharin. So we will get back to you with, because the UCC RTF, you know, make an event snapshot. So we will get back to you the response and the event snapshot. So thank you so much again, and see you at the closing plenary in the afternoon. Thank you. Thank you, Manoj.